No, no, no.
All but two.
The two that I sent you all, they're the ones who responded to
people in the town who live down. So I'm very happy to be here and to be involved, and I really look forward to it.
Oh, that's great, and we welcome your expertise, and we have an assignment for you. That's great. Thank you so much.
Give the new guy the hard work.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then Adrian is here for Sandra Madabu Fry. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're short of a quorum. But thank you to those who are here. I think we should go quickly so that everyone can go to their hearing. I think for future, we talked about trying to see whether or not it made sense to have the meeting. But it went forward, and so maybe I think we should try and have maybe more deliberate discussions about that the next time. Because a lot of people here, including me, would like to have been at the hearing or maybe testify or so. And I think that this is just making it too hard for people to choose. So to those of you who did join us, thank you. And for those who weren't able to because they're on their way to go testify, thank you for testifying and for your public service. Did someone just join?
This is Richard.
Hi. Richard. Who?
Richard Gray.
Great. Okay, we got a quorum. Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
No. Thank you very much.
Today's a little busy, as everybody knows.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to try and be really speedy. I think we also may not have as much to talk about in our 60-minute slot as we had thought, so that is going to help us get out quickly. Okay, so we have Richard Gray, we've got the 7, and let's go to approving the agenda. I'm going to suggest that we try and do the legislative update first, because I think it would be helpful to get our bearings on where we are with regard to this hearing, and if there's going to be another hearing, and specifically the SEU implications of the bill that's being heard today.
Okay, in terms of that note, neither Mark nor Robert are here as well for the same reason. But when I checked in with them last week, they said this was the only item which they had already spoken about at the last board meeting as it relates to the omnibus hearing today. So
the SEU parts of it?
No, just in general, they indicated that they would not be in attendance late last week. But there was no other updates in terms of the main thing was the hearing, the omnibus bill.
Right, so the omnibus bill has some implications for the SEU and for the SETF.
Right.
So I think
you want that update.
Probably the last meeting should have heard about that, knowing that the October 9th hearing was coming up, and decided in the last meeting whether or not the board would have wanted to have gotten on the agenda for the hearing and spoken to it one way or another. So yeah, if it's possible for somebody to speak to that issue, I don't know if it's going to come up today and or whether or not there'll be another opportunity for the second hearing that Chairman Kane referenced in her email last evening.
Okay, yeah, he did give a high level overall summary of the bill, but I looked to Hussein to see if he can.
That now.
Yeah, give
great.
Scott, I can also speak to it at some point.
Thank you, great.
Yeah, this is Hussein Karim, people on the phone. So the bill raises the SETF surcharge, both for the electric and the gas, and it triples the gas surcharge, and that's a permanent increase, which gives another $8 million, I believe, an additional $8 million. The electric surcharge is raised as well, but that is initially raised, I think, in a year or two, and then it declines by 2032. It goes back to what it is today. So it's not a permanent increase, as the legislation was introduced. And so we estimate an additional, a total of what, 40 to 45 million on top of the 22 we're collecting right now. So essentially all little more than doubles the collection. And the law specifically says that it will fund the Green Bank in the tune of, I believe, 10 million a year. 15 million a year.
And then 10 for the next. Well, the first 15 million goes to the Green Bank for a couple of years, right? And then 10 million after that.
For the next 3 years.
Yeah. And it also sets aside 20% of the collections for low-income programs, either administered by the DOE or by the SEU. And the last thing is that the the legislation has something called the BEPS, the Building Energy Efficiency Standards,
Mhm.
and it allocates money for DOE to provide programs, incentives, whatever it is, for that program as well.
Out of that extra
Yeah, out of the
surcharge,
yes.
additional surcharge.
I don't know if
Okay,
there's
good,
anything
really
else.
helpful, thank you.
Well, the other thing that's not related to the SU is that it raises the RPS,
Right.
which you may know about.
Okay, and was that Scott who's testifying on these issues?
Yeah, this is Scott. I'm going to speak to this as well when I testify. But no, that's an accurate description of the changes to the SCTF. I mean, I think the rationale for the electricity fee declining over time is that the RPS begins to cover more and more electricity. And so the council member's ambition was for that fee to fall as the RPS and any rep costs rose.
Yeah, and the one last thing I forgot is with respect to the SEU, it eliminates the minimum spend on each fuel type. Right now, at least 75% of the gas fuel and the electric fuel must be spent on that programs supporting those fuel types.
Mhm.
That is eliminated, that is repealed. So the SEU can spend basically on whatever it thinks is it's the most savings.
Becky, can I ask a quick point of information?
Yes,
and
please.
maybe it's something that you kind of alluded to. So, this is supposed to be an apolitical board that, doesn't advocate in particular, but how were these numbers arrived at? In other words, was there a public comment period, or who gave input into? I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that I'm against anything. I'm just wondering how the decisions were made.
Well, my guess is there were advocates who were involved in giving input, providing input, because there was an alternate that was initially proposed, which was a carbon tax, and that bill was set aside, and this was its replacement.
But I think if I can step in, this is Scott. I think the carbon tax policy, effectively, Councilmember Che declined to go that route. And the Building Energy Performance Standard has been advocated for quite a while by a group called the Institute for Market Transformation. And then a much more aggressive RPS has been advocated by a group of people around the district. Some have been seeking 100% by as early as 2025. And I think the 2032 number came out as that number may be vestigial from the carbon pricing, which was set around the 2032 goal as well.
But in terms of the
I don't know exactly where the SCTFD numbers came from. That I think was worked out between a few folks in the dark of night right before introduction.
and the split with the Green Bank. So is anyone from the SEU here, or are they all testifying? Yeah. So what do you guys have views on what the implications are?
No, I mean, we're pretty agnostic. We're a contracted with the city, so we're following whatever DOE's advice is.
So what will be the net change in funding for SEC, or is there no change?
There is no change unless they do the 20% low income set aside as well. The change that's happening is that their minimum spend on each fuel is being repealed. So they have more flexibility in what they can spend.
But they're not going to get any more influx of cash from this.
No, not as proposed, unless they, again, administer the 20% low income program.
This is Betty Hand. I'm sorry, I was just putting the final touches on our testimony, and I've just joined. But on that first question, we certainly were not involved in any formal way in the change in the SCTF. And as you will see in our testimony, it's just a rate increase. It means for gas customers, the increase will be going from $4 million to 13 or 14 million, like a tripling of it's a $12 million, whatever the difference is, $11 million rate increase on gas customers, and for electric customers, it goes from I think 16 million to around 22, 24 million. it does not increase the money for the SEU, as you said. It gives $15 million to the Green Bank, and it means, and there's a big surplus that's undesignated. And our great concern, besides the rate increase, which is bigger than most rate increases that we've granted in our last few rate cases, is that this surplus, this undesignated money, what's it for, where's it going, and will it get scooped up as SCTF money has in the past. Anyway, I take it off, put me back on you, there's noise in the background.
Thank you. So, what does happen with that? Why was that created, a surplus without a fund?
Well, the surplus is what Usain alluded to. It's really that 20% of funding that is supposed to go to the SEU if the agency chooses to do so. Because by the time you do the numbers, we're looking at roughly maybe a 20 or even 22 million increase over what we're collecting right now. 15 million goes to the Green Bank, and then we'll probably have about maybe $5 to $7 million for low-income programming. Of course, they also talk about funding the Building Energy Performance Program, which we have no idea what the cost for that will look like. But if we were to ballpark that at maybe $1 million, $1.5 million, we have about $5 million a year that could go to the SEU for expanding low-income programming. So we can call it a surplus, or we can call it at 20% of the additional revenue. But all this is predicated on the fact that we'll keep collecting the same amounts that we have in the past 2 years.
Oh, one other thing I forgot, it does introduce a tax on fuel.
Fuel oil, there's a tax on fuel oil.
Oh, that's part of the transportation section?
No.
Well, no, it's heating oil primarily for, residences and even some businesses to the extent that they're using heating oil. We anticipate roughly about $1 million coming from that. Just basically looking at EIA usage and trying to apply the surcharge that's proposed in the bill. So that, along with the additional SCTF funds, are what are going to be used for the Green Bank, low-income spending, and funding the Building Energy Performance Program.
So it seems like there might be a lot of people competing for that same $5 million, or at least begin to protect it.
Probably.
Yeah.
And on all of this, I think best case scenario looking at fiscal year 2021, because the new rates are going to take effect in FY20. So we'll need a full 12-month of collections to figure out if we're even getting to that 45, 46 million that we think that we're going to be achieving.
Hussein, you're going to the hearing?
Yes.
So could you all take good notes for us and maybe send a real quick summary? Because I think there's a second hearing coming up.
Yes.
In case the board is, I personally don't have a very good sense right now of whether or not there ought to be a place where the board is saying, weighing in and saying, the SEU has a vision, and is there going to be enough attention to, for example, the low-income side of it, and that's something that the SEU does, and, that would be something that would be difficult to do.
And
this is Scott. Let me just offer that the bill was sequentially referred to Councilmember Chase's committee and then to Councilmember McDuffie's committee. I think it's October 26th for the second hearing.
29th.
Yeah, 29th.
It's the 29th.
29th, thank you.
Yeah, so that would give us the second, another opportunity if the board thinks that it ought to be taking a position or weighing in. I know we don't do advocacy, but we can provide expertise. Dr. Cooper, can you give us a preview of what PEPFAR is going to say? Out of curiosity?
Yes, exactly. I could be very brief. So, of course, supporting the overarching goals are established with the legislation. We do have concerns that we've expressed with the long-term PPAs because there are variabilities and fluctuations regarding the price points that were related to your renewable energy sources. And if that goes down, and also based on data as well as analysis there, customers would not realize that particular benefit. So that's one area of concern. One of the things that we talk about as well is complementary pieces that do focus on more so focusing on resiliency and modernization, innovation as complementary to the aspects of the bill that have been advanced. Also, we tee up a discussion around renewable portfolio standards, but also looking at what is defined as a clean energy standard as well. So looking at different technologies and resources that in general do not emit carbon. So those are the three bucket areas that we will be commenting on.
Okay, thank you. And how about OPC? Are you able to give a highlight? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you. I would
one comment, well, just looking at this holistically, just ensuring that we are sensitive and considerate of achieving the meaningful outcomes and objectives, as well as being considerate of affordability and cost that is associated with a lot of this as well.
Right. No, that makes very good sense. I understand and agree. Does anybody have anything else on this? I think it would just be really helpful to hear what goes on today. And I don't know, maybe we'll end up doing a little conference call when we see what comes out of it and see if anybody thinks the SCU maybe ought to step in.
Would the purpose of stepping in be to advocate for that additional funding?
I don't know. I mean, I think that would be, we don't do advocacy, but I think that maybe there's a perspective that would be helpful to, indicate that we don't see certain needs being addressed necessarily, or whether or not they could be amplified by a particular allocation.
And it could be informed by what happens in terms of the SCU, because I know the chair can speak, can give statements on behalf of the board. Of course, board members can speak on behalf of their own organizations, but in terms of having an SCU board's position, I believe the bylaws state it would be the chair that would give official statements, but not in terms of advocacy, as Millie was saying, but just positions or just things to be taken under advisement and things of that nature. So
observation. Right.
And as you can see, there are 89 people on the witness list for today, so there will be a lot of perspectives garnered today.
And Hussein's going to take copious notes on what each one of them say. So okay, thank you. Thank you all very much. Okay, so we didn't yet approve the agenda. Anybody want to approve or have any other changes to the agenda? Someone want to move for approving the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Anyone second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the minutes. Really quickly, anybody got anything? I had a couple of things. Didn't. That's pretty wicked. And yeah, I don't have mine. Did anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Here they are. Okay, sorry, just I have small. On the board members, Nina Dodge is to be sworn in. I think she's already been appointed. So it should be corrected so that it says she's sworn in. On the second page, low savings entity, I think should be low serving entity.
Oh yeah, let's see.
Okay, but I'm sorry, I had one comment on the agenda going backwards for a second because that was part of the notes. I think it talked about having a recurring item on the agenda of the SU talking to us about obstacles it has encountered,
Yes.
and so had requested that for today, so as to inform our report writing.
I intended to, I saw that note and I reached out to Ted, but because of the hearing, he indicated that he would not be attending today and he wanted to be able to provide those comments in person. So that's my, I intended to follow up with you on Friday to say that he wouldn't be attending. And I think as an alternate, you suggested sending along, or maybe I did, just some comments as to what those obstacles were for FY17. So he hasn't sent that along as yet, but that will be forwarded to the board when it is ready. But he did say he wouldn't be here today and wanted to be the one to give that presentation.
Okay.
If I may also, I mean, we are working on those, and I think we'd like to have a discussion. We can submit it in writing in advance, and then have these as part of the discussion.
Okay, we're just going to be compressed because if the report is due in December, that was why I was hoping for today.
Okay.
And then just as a reminder, it was going to be a continuing item on the agenda, and it hasn't been on the agenda for a while. So if we could put that back on, it would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. And maybe we should consider a different, we'll worry about that later, a different date for the next meeting because we're all behind on our report writing. That we really technically have only one meeting between now and the time the report is due. Maybe we'll do a call or two in between, but we could discuss that in a moment. Did anybody else have anything on the minutes?
This is a question, but it says the board's report is due 90 days after the EMC report. Is that in our bylaws, or where is that?
That's in the legislation.
Law.
Yeah. And last year we had an extension. Is there some, where do we request that extension?
We basically requested Mary Chay's office for the extensions.
However, what did not make it into the minutes, and I'm not remembering if it was in the discussion or not, was that the Inspector General report, was it on SU performance, commented on the SU Advisory Board's performance, as well as the SU's, and it's not getting the report in on time. So I do think that we should be mindful of trying to stick to a schedule and not ask for too many extensions. And since it's going to come in again around December and the holidays, asking for extensions is just going to screw up holidays again. So we should maybe try to avoid that if we can. And my suggestion that maybe play with the schedule some for getting it done. Anything else on the minutes? Okay, so with the changes noted.
So I move with the changes noted that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. They are approved with the changes noted. Thank you. Okay. Lance, want to tell us about the revisions to the EN&D report, please?
Yeah, sure.
Tell us what date is now considered approved so we can count our 90 days.
When did I send it out? Friday before last?
28th.
28th. So I believe the clock started on the 29th. So that will put you December 29th.
Okay. And in October, September 20th.
Yeah, it was September 28th at 7:12 p.m.
Okay.
Because it doesn't specify. It just says 90 days, right?
Well, the 29th is a Saturday. December
Could be the
29th.
next business day.
January.
No, December 31st. It's still 31st. New Year's Eve.
Yeah, December 31st.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, did you have sent around the revised one?
Yeah.
Yes, I sent around the final draft, and what we printed here is the marked up version, so you may recall asking for the track changes.
I did, yes.
So that's what we printed for the folders today, but in the email and Also in the Dropbox, you'll be able to find the final draft of the clean copies of this.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, sure. You may recall when we presented the findings to the board, there were a couple of things that the board requested that the evaluators went back and included. One is that one-page summary that's included in the front of the document on page 1 that shows clearly the benchmarks hit and the benchmarks that were, maximum and minimum amounts. The board also requested that we include comparison cities for the cost of energy saved. So we took a look at PECO Energy and Baltimore Gas and Electric for our comparison cities to include in the report. Third, there was a request for peak demand usage for DC to compare that to the DCSU's peak demand that we've included in the report. Thank you very much to Dr. Cooper for providing us with that information. Fourth, we included historical trends for the cost effectiveness test to show how the test, the value of the cost effectiveness screening over the years. There was also a request for a comparison of the largest energy users, FY17 versus the previous fiscal year. So we went back all the way, I believe, to 2013 to include those numbers. As a matter of fact, 2014 to show you 2014 through 2017 how the DCSU performed. And last but not least, we were also asked to provide a brief explanation as to why the full benchmarks were not achieved for green jobs and low-income savings. The DCSU provided that information for us, and we've included it in the report. You can find those on page 15 and 16 in terms of why the full targets weren't hit.
Thank you. I think it was very helpful that they've incorporated the changes that we talked about. So I find these to be helpful. I don't know if others have any remarks, or if anybody has spotted that there was something that they wanted to see in here that was not in here.
Procedurally, this report is not final, and at what point does this person funds to SEU reflect the final benchmark assessment?
We already completed that phase already, made payments against the performance benchmarks that you see listed in the report. And we can provide that information to the board in terms of the actual amount that was paid out. We had mentioned it, I believe, in maybe 2 previous meetings, but we can provide that information in the exact amount that was paid out.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I was saying we can provide you with a number for the performance incentive for FY17, the exact dollar amount that they received.
Okay.
I believe it was somewhere around 783,000, I think, but we can give you the exact number.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, again, to let everybody get to the hearing, I'm going to just switch us quickly to the report itself. And, okay, so we had a couple of, I had sent out an email before I had gone away, suggesting that we try to get a draft to one another, or if not text, then an outline, or be prepared to talk about what we thought we might do with respective sections. I understand we're all busy. I was busy. I circulated an article that I thought did my work for me, that I thought was very helpful, that I wanted to get people's input on. But I do think we have to figure out what to do in order to get this started, let alone across the finish line before December 29th, if not sooner. Ideally, we would have had an exchange or discussion today, and then one in November, and then could have been done by December 1st. And I guess, if our first, do people have any thoughts on, let me see, writing up pieces and commenting November 1st? I guess we could do it in 2 drafts. Does that make sense? Everybody do their piece and exchange it in advance so we can all talk about it by November 1st meeting. I mean, by the next November meeting, I'm sorry. and then finalize it in the December meeting? Doing a lot of individual writing?
Yeah, I mean, this is Richard, I can work towards that goal.
Excellent.
Well, based on last year's experience, do you think it would be helpful to have a totally separate meeting? I know we got into some issues of having a kind of non-publicized meeting, but if we could have a working meeting dedicated just to the annual report, maybe even before the November meeting, just so that we'll get started and stay on track.
We certainly did that before, had working groups. Are we not allowed to do that?
No,
We
you
can do working groups.
Mhm.
Sure.
All you need a quorum for is some,
To
things
vote.
like to vote, yeah. things
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. That's great.
I would propose having a working group in between the board meetings, because last year it seemed like we was really down on track.
Mm-hmm. I think that with a couple of people being the lead for pulling it all together, with the cooperation of the others sending in their specific suggestions and sections. That's certainly fine by me, unless we want to do like working groups in accordance by topic, which is what had been done before as well.
Vicki, if I might, the other thing is that, I've been a stickler in the past to try to make the executive summary reflect, what we're trying to say overall, what everybody's trying to say in the report. So I think a separate meeting would be useful just to sort of have everybody's opinion on what it is, other than the specifics that we need to enumerate in the report, what it is we're, trying to say overall.
I agree with that. I think.
I'm an advocate for a separate meeting where, included in addition to specific sections, we just sort of try to, get a sense overall thematically of what, the advisory board's trying to say.
I agree. I think we need to be mindful of why we were told last year that we couldn't have that kind of a discussion, which was that it was supposed to be one that was done in a transparent fashion. But we're not voting on anything. I think we're throwing out some ideas as to what the shape of the document will be, which is how we've done it historically.
Right, and I think part of the issue was wanting to close the meeting to the public, which would be different from just having a working group or subcommittee meeting that anyone could participate in. So the board is certainly not precluded from having a meeting in between board meetings, and the next board meeting is scheduled for November 13th. So maybe a meeting in between now and then, or a call, or whatever form the board would like to convene, and should help with managing the timeline.
Okay, and that is exactly right. It was the issue of whether it was closed or open. Yeah. So, okay, let's schedule another one when we're all have digested the new report and have our assignments. And I might throw some things by some people in the interim, based upon my article having done the work for me. So let me just first. Does that sound okay with everybody? Then we'll have another meeting at a different time to get it moving, and then we can exchange some drafts.
Sure.
Thank you, and it will be an open meeting. When that review, we will hold for people for availability, and yes, we should do next week. Is that just? Can people do next week?
Yeah.
I think. If we do the Google poll, if we have like 2 available dates, that would be great. That way.
Okay, that'd be very helpful.
Any preference on dates, or we should just pick the dates for you guys?
Maybe a doodle poll.
A doodle poll, yeah.
I think maybe like a call might be easiest for everyone, and everyone
Can we do that? Can it still be publicly available?
Yes, once we post it on the website, and it'll still be publicly available. Just put the call-in number on the website.
That certainly works for me.
And so we should all have an outline for our sections before the call next week?
Well, I would definitely suggest, yeah, so let me just go back to, yes, please. So we have.
Vicky, we have put together a one-pager in the folders where you have highlighted names for the folks that you think you wanted to work on the various sections. It's from your email that you sent around to the board members. It was in the green folder. Would have been a.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ah, my email.
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who don't have folders, if you have the minutes from the last time, the list of people is on pages 3 to 4 in the last minute. And the category of leveraging external funds had been handled by Lenny Berliner, who had experience in the international development arena. That was why I thought, God. It's not necessarily, I mean, I don't know, you could tell us whether or not that'd be something in your bailiwick, but that would be a place that it would be helpful to have somebody define. Or to, and you know what, somebody else walked in the room, and so I think we should say hello and welcome.
Jared Lang with National Housing Trust.
Ah, thank you. Hi, how are ya? Good to see you.
Yes. Apologize for the absence. I've been busy building a lot of solar.
Ah, that's great. So maybe we'll assign you CDE requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So Jared.
Vicky, one correction before we move forward. Jared is no longer a board member. He was replaced, I think, by Farah
for the low income group, but he was the board member during the period of that's being evaluated.
Oh, I'm still getting the emails.
It just expired like 2 weeks ago,
Didn't
though.
tell me I was removed.
It just literally it just happened.
Oh,
so Farah just because all of the board members continue to serve until the new members were appointed. So even though your term expired, even though the 3-year term expired, you continue to serve until you were replaced, which just happened.
Okay.
So Farah is the new low income representative. I know she said she would be calling in at 10:30, but I'm not sure if she did.
Okay.
So you escaped.
You don't have a deadline of next week. Okay, so we'll see if Farah joins, and maybe I can.
I've not met her either. This would have been her first board meeting.
If she doesn't make it onto the call, can you give me the contact information, please? And I can give her a call. Thanks.
One quick comment. Have we considered, there's still a budget allocation for the advisory board?
Yes, $9,000.
And have we
But we eat
considered,
into it some, right?
Yeah, with your training. But that was last fiscal year. We have a new fiscal year now.
Okay, because Millie had a great idea on how to spend it.
well, just based on just the time constraints of the board members and kind of the logistical challenge of pulling the report together and editing it, have we considered maybe hiring someone to help, maybe providing outlines with different facts and asking someone to put that all together?
We have not done that previously. DOEE has helped us with clerical support, but we haven't done on the substantive side, I think you're talking about.
Yeah, I think having someone support at least pulling everything together, editing, finalizing would be helpful. I'm not sure if that's an appropriate use of the board's funds, but it could help with some of the logistics.
I think it would be very helpful. I'm just not sure how we might do it in the timing that we have. And does anybody have anything on that?
Yeah, normally we procure things on behalf of the board, so that is something we would have to put out a small request for a quote. It could be even, I don't know, you have someone in mind? Because it could be done relatively quickly because we're talking about less than $10,000, but
we need to draft the scope of work and just send it out, and then it could be done like in 14 days or so once it's put out.
What's the time? Are the advisory board funds on a allocated on an annual basis?
Yeah, on a fiscal year basis.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
When does the fiscal year end?
Next September 30th. We
Oh,
just started.
So we just started with a new allocation.
Yes.
So everything unspent is no longer.
It's no longer from last year.
Maybe something to think about going forward. And there were time constraints that we're gonna wait to have somebody come on within 2 weeks notice to do the time. Or even 30 days possibly, because once you get the scope, you've gotta look at the proposals and check it out and make sure this person can do that. It's just, you lose 30 days of time. So maybe something the board talks about at the next meeting, maybe put it on the agenda going forward. That would be a good thought.
Sure.
Or if it is, just more.
But I just want to interject, it's a great idea. I think we should, I mean, I don't think it's going to be terribly expensive, and I think it'd be terrific for us to have somebody, you know, helping us organize all of this.
And if we're still working on the high level details or kind of insights, the next 30 days, it could just be that someone steps in and then helps finalize and edit.
So I think it's gonna take longer than 30 years. You still have to do the process, do the procurement.
The selection.
Yeah, and the selection, it could be 60 days before they actually come on board. By then, we pretty much want to be done with this, beginning of December. Versus mid.
Yeah, beginning mid.
Yeah, beginning to mid.
But in terms,
And of course, we can provide that support, you know, even if it's as simple as us getting the various sections, compiling it into one document, you know, sending it back around for the entire board to review and edit. We can certainly help with that process. I think the biggest challenge is just getting folks to just draft their initial sections, and once we put it all in one document, it becomes easier for the board to edit. Similar to the way you review and edit minutes, you know, we just put it together for you.
Yeah, it would be, well, certainly that piece of it would be extremely helpful, and you all have done that before. And I'm certainly not in a big firm or big government anymore, and would definitely rely upon that assistance, because I don't have it anymore. But I think we should talk about it certainly for the future, because I think it's a great idea, and we never do seem to use this money, and it just goes away, so we might as well, you know, be making use of it. Let me just go back for a moment to Scott and leveraging external funds if he's still on the phone. Scott, are you still on?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, thank you. So this, I think, became a sort of a new issue for the SEU because it didn't, well, it's always been, I can't remember now if it was always in the legislation or not, but with the idea being how to leverage external funds that the SEU could bring in so as to optimize what it's able to do with the monies that it does get out of the SETF, et cetera. And we did have discussion about, I don't think that you were here on board yet when we talked about PJM and those kinds of investments that have been made. But that would be something that the SEU has been ramping up and able to do more now as a result of the legislative changes because it's now 5 years, it's no longer 1 year. But there's, those are the kinds of areas where it would be helpful to have some perspective on, are there other opportunities, are there other things? But just so you know, in case you weren't here in the prior meetings or anybody else who wasn't in the discussion, I think just generally, because again, we're going to try and be mindful of getting out to the hearing, the idea for the report this year would be, rather than all of us from whole cloth write up or replicate what's already in the EM&B report or elsewhere, that we attach the EM&B report and provide the comments or the thinking that comes from our particular areas of expertise in ways that we can improve the way we help to improve or recommend improvements or updates or upgrades to the way the SEU is doing business. So I guess I was not necessarily imagining that we would have to each be producing 10 or 20 pages, but thinking that our value added is better spent with some 50 recommendations in the particular areas of our expertise. If people disagree, by all means jump in, but it didn't seem like we were getting necessarily, we were getting a lot of bogging down in our 60-page, you know, epics. And I'm not sure that those were necessarily read by anybody or useful. So I would recommend, and I appreciate the suggestion of a meeting next week, that for a meeting next week, that people come up with their high-level ideas on what they would want to communicate in their respective sections. And we also talked about with Ted in the last meeting that if we had any follow-up we wanted to do, like I think that the EM&V report, that was a helpful exercise where we put in our comments on it, that we'd like to see more, for example, on trends or comparison, or how are we doing with comparison to other jurisdictions that do cost effectiveness testing. And we wanted to ask the SEU about items. He has said he would make himself available or provide us to the respective personnel who might be able to answer our questions, so we could say, why has X or Y not been achieved, and what might we recommend be done differently. I'm thinking also maybe would it be possible for Ted to talk to us next week about the obstacles? Because those might be things that we would weave in to sort of high level as opposed to in writing. Okay, if he can, and if he can't, he can't. Okay, so I'll just quickly though, unless anybody has others.
Sorry, thank you, but that will be determined based off of the doodle poll. I think it goes out with the meeting.
I'm sorry.
Doodle poll for the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So unless anybody has anything specific, I was going to say I had assigned myself to the going forward section. So John was going to do the big vision statement up front, which he has done before and done so well. And I was going to recommend some moving forward what we the board might recommend. And I was pleasantly surprised to see this article about BEIC, and with regard to Vermont, an investigation or an inquiry opened by its version of a PSC to say, how do we take a look at what our equivalent in Vermont of the SEU has been doing, and how do we do it better? And ironically, the two things I think that came up, at least in this article, were things that we've been talking about, which one of them had to do with aligning energy reduction targets with greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, and another being that we had talked about the fact that we used to have a numeric requirement for peak demand reduction and moved away from that to narrative, but might it make sense to try to bring some of that numeric accountability come back in, because technologies have changed, things like storage and things that didn't used to be in the equation when the benchmarks were first written might now benefit from a new look at the benchmarks and how they're applied. And both those items were discussed in the context of the BEIC in Vermont. And those were exactly I was going to put on my framework for discussion for things that the board might want to get to talk about, making recommendations that would be legislative changes to the benchmarks. So I invite people's discussion.
So can I get some additional context to that? Is that Green Mountain Power, the largest utility in the state of Vermont, they're making a play for the public benefit dollars because they want to do efficiency themselves, and so that's kind of undergirding some of the investigation. I put that in quotes in terms of efficiency of the. So they're leading that charge with the state legislature that they want to do efficiency programs themselves.
Mm-hmm. Which does happen in other jurisdictions as well. Yeah. But I guess in terms of where I had been thinking, I think that the types of changes that are talked about are a little different than who is implementing the changes, but they all go towards how do we most effectively get to those same outcomes. Mm-hmm. But I thought that these particular outcomes that were being discussed were things that were aligned with where the district would want to be heading. It could be helpful. So given everything that's going on, the Green Bank stirring, et cetera, and always trying to think about positioning the SEU the best place to be accomplishing its mission, maybe it's a good time for us to look at what the mission is and see whether or not things have changed. The circumstances have changed that would warrant an update of the benchmark. And I don't know if anybody had any other thoughts on it or ideas. But I know those were two stick out for me.
Maybe that's something as people write their own sections, they can come up with full ideas.
Absolutely.
So I'd offer, even though I am going to be rolling off the board, at some point I'd be happy to come back, just speaking as a low-income housing developer. The difference in our relationship and the projects that we're working on with DCSEU in the previous contract to what we're seeing now. We're actually we're seeing that we're not able to get into as deep of retrofits under the current contract, and a lot of it is related to the tie-in of the energy spend dollars to a savings benchmark. And I think maybe we could have a, if you'd like, I'm happy to talk, and you can kind of see from a development perspective the different projects that we used to do, what they look like now, and how the DCSU is engaging with some of the housing developers. And I can bring in some examples of some other partners. But we have, since the new contract, we've done 2 projects. We have 3 more in the hopper, and just generally, we're seeing that the approach is that the DCSU isn't able to do as deep of upgrades.
Are you participating in FC 1148's working group on deep energy retrofits at the PSC?
No, wait a bit. So I have a counterpart who's actually my advocacy colleague, right? And he's engaging pretty probably on everything here.
Okay.
I'm primarily a developer.
Okay.
And like a low-income housing.
It would be very helpful if you participated or your partner participated in that proceeding, because right now there's like 11.25 million. We're looking at
this money, of course.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
we're deeply involved.
Okay.
So I don't if you met Todd Nedwick.
Yeah, he was
from-
there.
I probably met Todd. I wasn't there at that last
He's-
meeting, but
yes, he's in that working group. Absolutely. So
Adrian, are you suggesting that the discussion belongs in that forum and not in this forum?
No, I think it's appropriate here to discuss why it's no longer available here. But one of the things that OPC said in their comments was that DCSU can't do deep energy retrofits anymore, and weren't because of the dollar and the spending. And appropriately, we asked that those funds go to deep energy retrofits. So OPC and NCLC, that was our recommendation to the PSC, and it was adopted. And we are moving forward in working groups right now in formal place 1148. And so actively participating in that one. So that's why I was wondering.
I was just thinking because years ago we made some choices as a board when we were looking at the re-upping the contract that I think now have had some consequences. And I'm not sure if those were what was intended. And so I think maybe it'd be helpful to have a conversation just to share with the board. And I've talked to DCSEU, and they say, from their perspective, they say there's opportunities to make changes to those rules, and maybe there's a change that the board wants to make, depending on, what you see. But maybe it's fine. So
I think it would be helpful to hear. I think that's the point of the board, to hear how are the board's recommendations vary when they're being implemented. So I think that would be very useful.
It sounds like you should probably finish your report.
Come in
And
January.
then come January, February, I can come in and I can show you, I can get into some details and tell you the different types of projects. We have like retrofits, ground up property projects.
Well, I guess I have a question whether this is for 2017 performance. So would this be relevant to 2017 performance? Or
No, the issue that's being described when it comes to deep energy retrofits that you're seeing a change in. Prior to the savings benchmark, the SEU low-income target was essentially just spending. They could afford to finance 100% of a measure for as long as they hit that dollar threshold. But at the board's recommendation, which we agreed with, we instituted a savings requirement, which meant now that when you're doing low-income measures, you're not just doing them for the sake of spending the money. They have to be somewhat, cost effective in producing savings while the SU is spending those dollars. And I think that has created a situation where some measures that they could have done before that were not cost effective, they can no longer pursue that because they need to make sure that they're achieving savings coming out of the low-income sector. So the board would need to balance whether we just want to be spending money in low-income sector to do deep energy retrofits, or we want to make sure that we're having an impact in terms of a savings perspective for the DCSU.
Yeah, and I would just say that, you know, I think it's a great idea. I thought it was a great idea at the time, and I think that you can have a savings goal, but you can adjust it based on the outcomes that you want. You know, so the question is, like, we should look at some of the outcomes maybe, or the board can look at some of the outcomes and decide if the level is correct for the outcomes that you want.
Well, I guess I was going to say before getting into the merits on it, because I also remember a lengthy conversation the board had about the fact that there could be this perverse disincentive of doing more, because if you have to do more and then maximize what your spend is accomplishing in the low-income sector, then maybe you're not going to do as many projects, and they'll know, wow, really? Like, that's the way it's working. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. So I think it is a worthwhile conversation to hear how it's working or how it's being implemented. So my question is it a conversation we should have in being able to talk about 2017 performance, or is it a question that is actually afterwards? Because if it is part of 2017 performance, then I think it should be hearing later.
We'd also be
trying
happy
to
to
remember
talk
when
about 17 and 18 because I think what we're doing is we're playing a different role in the market that we've done for 18. So we have to talk.
Okay.
And
So could someone just remind me, I'm an old woman, when did these changes take place, and so when would we have been seeing the results that we're talking about?
It began with the new contract April 2017. We implemented the savings requirement. And as you can see in this report, part of the explanation why the SU didn't hit the maximum level on the low-income savings was that they needed pretty much ramp-up time to be able to recalibrate their programs to go after those savings. Not sure what FY18 explanations might look like, but we know for sure that we're having issues with them achieving the maximum mark again in FY18. And it will truly be the DCSU's position to explain the challenges that they've encountered in trying to get the savings.
So, yay or nay for FY6, or having this discussion, maybe official to the in between one. What do people think?
I think, I mean, to me, it'd be more applicable for FY2, because then we have a full year of implementation to go back to. So I know the intention of the report is to reflect on 2017, but is there also in the report, if there is a relevant issue occurring now, to also include that in the recommendation?
Well, that's part of the going forward piece of it. Yes, I think so. Lessons learned and
Well, I will tell you that, if, the longer we wait, the more things will happen. And I was not suggesting that we would, that you all would cram anything in to what you have to do now. I just wanted to offer that I was available.
No. I think it's very helpful. I appreciate it. That was why not?
As part of the next video report.
Yeah. What did you all think we would be doing in the next regular board meeting?
I guess
the next regular board meeting, where are we? November 13th. You probably can get a presentation from the SU on how they finished up FY18. Of course, we'll be nearing their submission of their report at that time, so we'll give you a good picture of what FY18 looked like. This topic might come back up at that point, but we wanted to dedicate that meeting for the SU's purpose of presenting the FY18 results.
Right, so did you imagine that a 2-hour presentation?
No, maybe the 40-45 minute range, but these things can vary depending on how deep the board wants to go on any particular issue.
I'd say let's do both, and yeah, if we can come back in November, that would be helpful. And maybe we don't have, we can do recognizing that the performance started in April of 2017, and there was a big ramp up. Might not be as deep a dive as we would do when we have more examples later, but I think maybe an overview would be helpful just to understand where we think we're going and what 2018 is looking like. I think it'd be helpful. Okay, so we'll look for something for next week to get something on our pieces, our respective pieces.
I think you're also going to address our outlines and how we're moving forward that as well.
Yeah, well, we're going to do 2 meetings now, I think. So we're going to do next week, or when the Google poll, right? We're going to do a call where we each come up with some of our recommendations for what we would include in our sections. Maybe it's just outline at that point, and then everybody says yay or nay, and then, or no, because we're not voting. Well, no, we are. It's an official public is involved, so we can vote on that. And then the regular meeting in November, we would have the full discussion on the SE performance for 2018 and Jared's contribution. And at next week's meeting, we can figure out where we are on the schedule for completion of the report. Thank you for bringing that. Anybody have anything else on the report at the moment? Because I'm sure there'll be lots of people for the hearing. So, Lance, you want to do expenditures? And we'll get out early.
Sure. On the expenditures front, we should have just passed these around for the report. But through August, the DCSU spent about $15.4 million, and we have roughly about $4 million that we're expecting to see in a September invoice that will be coming hopefully by the end of this week, on the 12th. I think Friday is the 12th. So we expect the final invoice to come in on September, which would account for the $4 million that's still roughly outstanding on the expenditure front. What you have before you simply a breakdown by invoice category of the spending month over month, starting from October 2017 through August 2018.
Anything of note?
I think the incentives amount, the incentive lines, those are the direct payments that go to residents and businesses. It's roughly about 5.6 million. Hopefully we'll be probably in the same ballpark at the end of the year, maybe another million or two to come in out of the 4 that you'll see going out the door. But typically the SCU spends somewhere between $6 and $7 million a year on incentives. Their subcontractor line, 1.9, I think we expect to see that pick up too in the September billing that's coming in to usually get us back to around that $3-4 million range. But outside of that, nothing jumps out at us. They're within their G&A limits, that 20% cap that we have imposed on the contract, so their spending is still below that level. Not sure if they'll max out the amount that they're paying for G&A, but.
So I'm sorry, you're saying you expect the subcontractor amount to go up by a couple of million, so it would be a total of.
Yeah, I think we can get to about at least $4 million on subcontractor spending.
Which would then put us at 5 and 4 is 9, so would it be
No.
The total?
It's another roughly $2 million to the 1.9 that's here on the subcontractor line.
So that's 3, so 3 and 5. That's far.
Yes.
So our incentives, like probably about 9.2.
9.2.
Yeah, when you count in subcontractor.
That seems like it's
It's up from last year. Yeah, last year we were 8.5.
And so what do you think that's from?
So I think one is getting a handle on, we actually got more customer contribution from low-income customers. And we reallocated our budget on the residential side to the customer budget, so to the commercial budget. So And we had bigger projects on the commercial side. So when I say we had bigger projects, it doesn't mean that we'll show this as a part of our recap. We served a ton of small businesses as well. So we did not leave that out. We were able to reduce the incentive amounts on the residential lighting side because the market is transforming a little better than where we were estimating. But we've doubled down on the commercial work as well.
So Biggie, next month, if I'm on the agenda again, I can do an FY17 versus 18 comparison for these spend categories, probably in a simple chart format to support this spreadsheet, make it easier for the board members to see.
That would be helpful. Is there a way to correlate it to energy savings or?
We could try to do that. We can show the energy savings resulting from 17 and 18. Yeah, we can do that too.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna adjourn early. Thank you.
Oh, I had a quick question, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Sarah. I was calling, I just wanted to know if we have any video capabilities for the meeting if we can't be there.
Yes, it's streamed live, so we can.
Oh, it's the live stream? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it on this time? Because normally
Let me see this. Can you see that?
So.
It was on. Is it this one? Yeah. I guess we should send out the link, but we'll send out the link prior to the next board meeting rather than doing it post. But it's these meetings are streamed live in accordance with all of the open meeting provisions.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, and that's Farah, who's our board
Yes.
member. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so sad I couldn't make the first one in person. I'll be there in November.
Okay, thank you. And I might give you a call about the report in between, if that's okay.
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 Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. Bye, have a good one.
You too.
Right, Vicki, thanks very much.
Thank you,
We'll talk soon, right?
Great, yes, thank you.
All right. Here, everybody.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yes.
That's also yeah, that's a lot.
What's your
And of course, as an external, well, as you know, there
Yeah,
is like
no, I mean, it's a great idea. I think it's done good.
yeah, so their own many of our grantees have issues with that.
I know.
So I have to do with that too. We have that solar system.
I bang my head against
The agenda, I think, was posted, but we will post the minutes.
Yes.
We really, we were very organized.
Yes, yes, and